Hello there, welcome to Genesis Models. My name's Bobby Waldron and this is episode 4 of the HMS Victory build by Deagostini. Now what we have in episode 4 is we have issues 13, 14, 15 and 16. Now if you remember back from the last episode, episode 3, we got up to this point where we got our launch all nicely planked out, and we've even sanded it nice and smooth, and we've nicely primed it up. We are a bit behind with this launch, but you know, it is a bit of a mini build in itself, so it's going to take a bit of time to do that. So we'll get this we'll get some more done this episode, and then the next until that's done. First off though, I want to look at HMS Victory for a bit first, and then we'll jump back into the launch at the end of this episode. So what did we get? Well, the issues 13, 14 and 15 we basically ended up just getting, as you can just see here, if I just show you on camera, we're basically the ribs, gluing them together as I've already shown you, and then you could just dry fit them actually on Victory. And it was literally the same for 14, again more ribs, and then 15 as well. We'll just check you there just to show you somewhere here. Where's it gone? There we go. And again, more ribs. So, you know, don't need to show you that, as I've already shown you it. And then you end up with basically this. You know, we've got all our ribs now all the way along, as you can see, looking absolutely you know, fantastic actually. Very, very nice indeed. Remember, do not glue any of this together. It's just, if I can get one off, they're all just slotted in, dry fitted, yeah, but just remember not to glue them in. We are going to be gluing them in episode 5, because this episode we're going to do some prep work for the first deck, sort of getting it ready to actually start gluing this together. So, you know, that side is rather simple, but what I want to look at now is what came in issue 16. Right, what the instructions want you to do now, which is a good idea really, is to basically get everything with all our ribs and our keel ready for the first deck. So really what you want to do is get out your ribs, right? Really you want to get them all out, although these are kind of tight in, which is also another part of the preparation work. And what you want to do is basically, we just want to get a nice sanding stick and just sand these tops, right? Just sanding them so they're all nice and flush, and you know, they look good. What you also want to do is, you know, as you've just seen me there was a bit tight, sort of pulling it out, right? You know, give it a little bit of a sand just inside as well, right? And if you need to as well, this is pretty, you know, it's too big to sort of get it all on camera, but you know, we want to sort of sand as well on the inside of these, and you just want to test fit until you get an absolutely, you know, not a tight fit but not a loose fit. You know, that's feeling like it's in there but it's not loose, but it's not tight, right? But then what you also want to do is also, once you've taken all these out, which is going to take a bit doing with some of these, right, you also want to make sure that all your tops are all nice and flush. To think about it, actually I might have told you to do that in episode 1 anyway, before the instructions told us to do this, but yeah, we just want to make sure it's all nicely sanded and it's nice and flush. And also, you know, you want to make sure as well that you can't feel any kind of raised bits. As you kind of run your finger over, I'm kind of feeling a bit of a raised bit there, so it might mean a little bit of sanding the top off so that it comes nice and flush with the keel, or to, you know, maybe even sort of actually knock the bottom of this down a little bit so it goes down a bit. You know, you just basically want to get all of this all nice and flush, this nice big flat surface nice and flush. And the reason for that is, I'll just sort of quickly show you, trying to maneuver this, is because we're going to be putting this deck on here, which, you know, fits rather nicely, and what we want is it needs to sit on a nice flush base, ready to be glued and pinned in and all those things. So that's going to take a bit of time to sort of, you know, do all of them and getting them all right, which I'll do the rest just off camera. Now the next thing it also wants us to go off and do is taking our deck, right, and we want to get this so that we can see 7B just here, and then getting a ruler. What we can do is each one of these, let's bring you in for this actually, each one of these little notches that have been cut out here for our ribs to go into, they do seem to be all 5mm wide, right? So what we want to do for each and every single one of them, we want to mark it at 2.5mm, right? Just a little mark, right? And we want to go all the way along, doing a nice little mark, just so you can just see it going through every single one of them. Right, I've now marked all them 2.5mm, so we've got the exact centre of each one of these notches. And what we want to do is what you do in quite a bit of woodwork to make sure everything lines up, right? Because we've got these two pieces, we want to make sure, you know, this is going to be nice and flush, right? And what we want to do, actually, I mean, it wouldn't be such a bad idea, right? Because we've got it nice and flush there, is just so we don't quite move it, bit of Tamiya tape, just to sort of, you know, so we don't sort of take it out of alignment. You know, one each end should do that nicely, and that should be good there. So that's going to stop it coming out of alignment. See, we can move that, but it's still nice and flush each end. And then we want to bring ourselves in with a camera, and then what we want to do, you can use a ruler, whatever you want. This actually came with a kit, we're going to be using this next, and we just simply butt up where we've marked our 2.5mm that side with the 2.5mm mark we've made that side, and it looks like the tape's just in the way. Let's just quickly change that, and then we simply get a pencil and run it down, and then we do the same with the next one. Line it up nice and run our pencil down. So what we've got here is both pieces now are basically perfectly aligned with each other, and these lines here are so as when we actually put this onto our keel and rib section, when we can't, it's a guide to put all our pins in so that the pins will go exactly where the ribs are, so this will lock down properly and nicely and really be all good. Because if you put a pin slightly to the left or to the right, you could basically miss one of your ribs just there, you know. So I'm going to go off and now get all these nicely lined up. Right, with them all nicely lined up, basically what we can do now is we can, let's bring you out a little bit more, we can basically now pop these in, and it might take a little bit of wiggling of a rib or two, but they do eventually get there. There we go. They should then pop in nicely, and the same on the other side. Right, making sure that, you know, the numbers are facing upwards. Hopefully you're just seeing the sort of lasered in numbers 7B. Alright, and basically this then, all the pencil lines you can see will line up. Right, which is good, that's what you want. But what we want to do now is it wants us to get these two pieces of wood on either side to nicely bend up against each rib. As you can see there, right, you know, it needs a bit of a bend in there. Now this wood is something like 5mm thick, so it's way too thick to do you know, soaking it in water or using a bending iron or something like that. So we need to really kind of cut into this to get it to want to bend. So what we want to do, and actually the first thing we wanted to do, I forgot to show you. Right, taking all our ribs here, put our piece in. We don't want to be making a cut into this piece here where it's going to meet our ribs, right, because we're actually going to be nailing and gluing this piece here to our ribs. So what we want to do, we just want to mark up with a pencil, right, where all our ribs come on this piece, right, so as we know not to cut where we've marked it. Right, so where's those gone? So these are all our little quick marks. We don't want to be cutting where those marks are. Then we want to bring in, you know, a simple little jig, get it from anywhere. For this I'm going to be using Hobby Colours jigsaw, a really nice jigsaw, and it's perfect for this job. And then what we want to do is, I've already done one, as you can see we've cut into there, and it just helps it bend more. And I'm just going to sort of follow the pattern we've sort of got on here. So what we want to do, let's get the one we've already done, so that both are exactly looking the same, both sides, and we can just mark each cut. When doing this first one, it is just kind of your sort of preference where you want to put the cuts, so long as the cuts aren't where the ribs are going to be that I've already marked, and more towards this end we put the cuts closer together. Alright, so just check these marks aren't going to be with any ribs, which they aren't and they shouldn't be. So then what we simply want to do here now is butt it up to one of our straighter edges. Let's bring you in a little bit closer. Right, then we get our little jig here, our little our jigsaw, sorry. Make sure it's lined up, and then we just simply make a nice little cut. Now this is sort of like one of the important parts, is where do we stop? Well, I mean, you could just do it with a mark on eyeball. Basically, the more you cut, the more of a bend it's going to do. But the more we cut, the more we can sort of risk cutting all the way through, and maybe the wood splits or something like that. Right, so as I say, you know, you could do the whole mark on eyeball trick. We need to go a bit deeper than that. Or we do get these little planks that actually come with these issues, and we can basically, as it kind of shows you in the instructions as a tip, we could use this as a guide. Right, so let's just get you on camera. As you can see, we've got that there as our little guide. So when we cut into this, basically if we reach this little plank here, you know, that means stop cutting. Right, now this might take a bit of time to do all these because we don't want to be rushing this. There we go. So there's our first little cut, and that is just going to allow it to bend a little bit better, just the way this one is here. This is bending, you know, a lot nicer. Right, so you want to do that to both of these pieces, and actually that is it for the HMS Victory. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to finish off this HMS Victory bit, and then we'll get cracking with the launch. Right, back to the launch now, and what we want to do, we want to make some notches for our oars to go into. Now what we want to do is get some Tamiya masking tape, really nice masking tape, put a nice length, enough to go across the boat, and then we want to basically mask it so we have something like 1 mil between the masking tape and the top. Right, so let's maybe bring that up just a tad little bit more. Let's get that, check that again. Right, we're looking better there. Now when putting masking tape on, it's a good idea to sort of hold one end, hold the other end, and to get a nice straight line we simply do this, where we hold it nice and tight one end and the other end, and then we bring it down, and it gives us a pretty nice straight line, but we want to try and keep it as equal as we can all the way along. So hopefully, as you can see, we've got a nice straight line going along there now. So let's just press this down so it's not going to go anywhere. Then what we want to do, we want to get a pencil. Now our first notch, now the measurements for this are, well, there are none. It is literally, they kind of just say in the instructions to literally sort of like make about 8 notches, and you know, to make it look like it looks in the instruction book. So what I've done is I've sort of made the measurements myself, and what we've got is taking our second rib inside, right, we want to make a mark there. That's going to be our first notch for our oar. Then what we want to do is to measure this all the way along here 8 times, and we want the measurement to be 1 centimetre. Right, so every centimetre I'm gonna mark this with a little mark just there, move it along, then we make another mark, and we do this all the way to the end 8 times for 8 oars. With these all marked up now, we want to kind of make our nice little notches for our oars. Now get in a nice metal file, one that is nice and flat and sort of rectangular-ish, right, so that we can nicely cut this all nice. So I'm just going to take a nice little easy one here, and what we want to do is where we've made our little mark, right, we want to take our little chisel here, so take our file, and then we just want to sort of get it started, right. We want to take it nice and careful just to get this groove started, being careful, right. And then what we want to do is, now we've sort of got this started, right, we just want to nicely file this down to our masking tape line. Right, so keep sort of stopping and checking that you haven't started going into the masking tape. There we go. Almost there. A little bit more. And a little bit more. And there we go. And then you might just want to sort of tidy it up a bit. Maybe come in with, say, a little blade. Right, and maybe sort of just trim up any bits of, you know, loose bits of wood that's just fraying about. Just neaten that up a bit nicely. There we go. And there's our first notch. And basically, you know, that is it. It does get a bit tough when you're sort of sawing through, filing through one of the actual ribs inside of here, you know, but it's the same sort of process, and then you can remove the masking tape. Right, before we actually go off and actually start spraying this now, we've got our little piece just here, and in the instructions, right, it wants us to go off and sand this to the curvature of our hull here. Now, the whole reason for this is, I mean, pretty much each one of these bits of planking, each launch is probably going to be a little bit different from each other, because, you know, basically it's handmade, so it might be a mil or two here and there. So this is a little bit sort of bigger than it needs to be, and I think it's for that reason. So what we just need to do is just start to sand down the sides of this, right, until it fits. Right, with a nice coarse sanding stick. But what you want to remember is to just, you know, with this kind of thing, you really just need to just plain and simply actually do a bit of sanding, test fit, do a bit of sanding, test fit, and it does need to come down to around about the first actual plank line down the bottom there, right? So I'm going to just keep doing the whole test fit and keep sanding a little bit, test fit, and then just simply glue it in with whatever you prefer, PVA glue, wood glue, or CA glue. So with that last piece in there, well, not the last piece, but, you know, last piece we want to get in there for starting to spray this up, I'm just sort of going off and I'm just getting a nice anti-static cloth, and I'm just nicely rubbing this down just to get rid of any potential bits of whatever, really. I mean, bits of sanding dust, normal dust, dirt, grime, you know, you name it, whatever might get onto our launch here. Now what I want to do is I'm going to be using Vallejo's 71001 white. Nice paints Vallejo are, you know, they are nice and easily friendly for any kind of beginner or even advanced, really, because we can sort of pretty much sort of pour in the cup and spray, but I would say, you know, for little things to do that. But when you're doing, you know, a bit of spraying, which this is a bit of spraying, it would be good to actually thin it down, you know, maybe 30-40% to whatever you sort of prefer. Now I'm just using homebrew thinners here, which is there's a nice little video on the Genesis Models website on how to make your own homebrew thinners. Right, make sure you give these paints a good shake, and then we pour in that about, you know, 60-70% paint to thinners, and then as always we want to give it a nice stir with Old Faithful to make sure we get this all nicely mixed together. There we go. Now before we go off and, you know, do that, what we want to do, just get, like, you know, a nice little paper towel, and we just want to, you know, spray out just a little bit out of our airbrush. And this is just because there's potentially just thinners down in the needle end, and we've mixed in the cup end, so we're just spraying through the thinners that's in the needle end, so it's all nicely mixed up. And just check how you are flowing. The other thing you want to do is try and get yourself hands free. Right, so again, like we did before with the priming, we're using some locking tweezers just so we can hold it, and we just want to spray the whole of the bottom of the hull. Again, we want to just come in with a nice light misty coat. Whoops, unless it blasts out accidentally. If it does, you know, just leave it alone, don't touch it, just let it dry, because you know, it's just, you don't want to be messing about with that. And we're just going all the way around, nice light misty coat. And then you just want to let it dry for a bit. You can cut to air by just pressing down the trigger on our airbrush here, just to help it dry up. And then we put nice light coats on after that until we've got good coverage, just like we did with the primer.